I went from working a 9 to 5 in the medical industry for over 2 decades as a pharmacy technician to now becoming a full-time day trader. I made over 6 figures in verified payouts. I've passed multiple funded accounts, and I've coached students through transformations they never thought was possible for themselves. My name is Clarence, and this is my story. I grew up in Tampa, Florida, born 1986, and my family did not come from wealth by any stretch of the imagination. My mom was born in Lake City, Florida, out in the woods, in the sticks, as some people will call them. My dad is from St. Kitts, which is in the West Indies, a Caribbean island in the West Indies. And when my dad came to America and he met my mom in Washington, D.C., they got together, and of course they had me, right? Them coming together in my situation wasn't, a silver spoon by any imagination. I struggled. We lived in trailer homes when I was young. We lived in, poor neighborhoods and impoverished neighborhoods when I was coming up. And it was really, no different than a lot of people that came up looking like myself in my similar circumstances and environment. My mom worked in different arenas of life. She was a correctional officer at one point. She was a teacher at one point. My dad was a full-time entrepreneur. He was a musician. He played steel drums. And so when he came to America with a group called Lord Saint. And, they worked at different hotels playing music on the beaches and things like that down here in Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater area where the beaches were. And that's how he made a living. They were working class, regular people. And, they raised myself and my sister. And we came up here in Tampa, Florida. As far as for me, I was just a normal kid growing up, just trying to blend in with the environment for the most part and, try to make my way and try to learn as much as I can and, just have fun as a kid. But for the most part, I felt like an outlier because of our situation, right? And just knowing that although, I was living around people who had similar financial situations as me, it seemed like mine was a little bit different because my mom was one of those mothers that had us in church every week. It was, Sunday school, then we go to church, then we got Wednesday choir rehearsal, then we got Bible study, then we listen. So we was in the church all the time. And not only that, but my mom was one of those moms where she was a penny pitcher. She was a conservative mom. She loved to save. And so because of our situation, she was saying, hey, listen, why do I need to spend all this money on name brands when we can get the same thing at Payless, Goodwill, and at the thrift store? For me, my situation, I used to always get picked on. I used to always be somebody that was looked down and frowned on just because I never had some of the latest stuff. I never had, a pair of name brand shoes until I bought my first pair when I was in high school for myself, right? And that was because of a lot of the heckling, a lot of the bullying that was happening because my parents couldn't afford the name brands that everybody else had. So when I got a chance to work for myself and, get a job, that was the first thing I did. So just seeing how, my upbringing was, how my parents lived, and seeing that there was a huge difference between how we lived and other people that we saw, that I saw going to school with and that had the name brands, seemed like their parents had the nice cars, the nice houses and things like that. So, early on, my dream was to at some point be able to afford some of those nice things for myself, which, like I said, is no different than many kids that was coming up in a background where, you struggle a little bit and you had to get it out the mud. Now, there was a pivotal childhood moment for me where, had a situation with my mom and my sister where I eventually had to move on with my dad and move in with my dad when I was 12 years old and basically live with my dad from that point. So for the first 12 years of my life, I was living with my mom. And then through circumstances, I moved in with my dad. And then from that second half of my childhood, let's say from 12 on to 18 and beyond, I was living with my dad. So I got a chance to see how lifestyle was living with my mom, who was born here in America. So I got a chance to see what it was like to live individually with each of my parents. But the struggle didn't change. The circumstances didn't change because, again, it was a single parent household in both circumstances. So there was, a lot of things that were left to be desired, so to speak. So I had to go out and get it and earn it myself because my parents, didn't have the means at that time. And I understood that, right? You come to that understanding very quickly once you see that, okay, seems like, the stuff that everybody else has, I don't have that ability to acquire those things. So it gives you that desire to want more out of life because you see there's less things that you have that other people have, other kids have. When that happened, that allowed me to see what it was like for a person that lives by entrepreneurship and makes their way by making money, going out and finding a way to make income for themselves. And that's what my dad did as a musician. And so when I was 12, he taught me how to play steel drum because he said that it was better for us to keep the money in the household by way of me playing and going out and doing gigs with him than him paying another grown individual that knows how to play the instruments, but yet he would have to pay them a full salary. So by him paying me a little bit less, he was able to keep more of the bulk of the income that we would make when we would go out to different places and hotels and private functions and play music, so that he would keep more money in the house. Right. And so that was pretty much my teenage years. And so that is how I learned what entrepreneurship was. I learned how to, make money for yourself and what that meant, as opposed to working a 9-to-5 job, which again, there was nothing wrong with that. There was honor in that as well. But I was able to see what the difference was between the two and how that affected your lifestyle, just being it that you either are working or you're not working. Now, during that time as a teenager, like I said, because I didn't have a lot of things, I had to go out and get it myself. So my first real job was at Dairy Queen. Okay. I worked at Dairy Queen making ice cream. At that time, they were allowing you to be 14 or 15 at the time it was 15 for you to be able to get a job. So I couldn't wait till I turned 15 because I wanted to get a job to make my own money so I can be able to afford and buy some of the things that I wanted for myself that I felt I was missing out on. And so at that time, I was making about, I believe it was like $7-8 an hour working at Dairy Queen. And that was my hustle, man. Listen, anytime it was overtime, anytime that they wanted me to stay late, like the job wasn't too taxing physically. I mean, I'm just making ice cream and, Sundays and things like that. So I was trying to rack up as many hours so I can rack up as much pay as I could, because again, you just making $8 an hour or something like that. And that's not enough unless you're able to accumulate a lot of hours. That was my real experience of seeing, okay, this is what working a real job, being an adult looks like when you actually are working and getting out in the working field. It became a pattern, right? To where it seemed like I was working so many hours, but I was making so little of pay that it used to bother my mind. And it sometimes would bother me because I would say to myself, okay, this is what life looks like? Like, how do you break out of this? It seemed like a trap because you didn't have enough skills to go on and work a better job because you weren't building that experience. But at the same time, you were working so much that you didn't have time to seek out other opportunities as well, because you had to put in a bulk of hours just to make a decent wage. And even at my young age, I could see that I was working with older individuals, grown men, grown women. And I'm saying to myself, okay, if I'm making this and you're working here and you're an adult, like, how far are you really going? And there's nothing wrong with that. But yet I'm saying to myself, I personally want more out of life. And I know working here isn't providing that. So how do you make a way and get out of this cycle in order for you to move on to another stage in your life? And that's when I knew, from comparing working a job to seeing how my dad was making money as an entrepreneur and a musician, it made me say, okay, well, it seems like it's two ways for you to make money, but I want to be able to find a way to have my own freedom. I want to be able to have my own schedule and set it based on what I feel like the times I want to work is, right? So long story short, I keep working. I become a pharmacy technician and I continue working, getting my work experience and knowledge in that field. And before long, I start to realize that I'm falling into the same cycle where it seems like the pay that I'm making, while it's okay, it's not enough for me to live the lifestyle that I really want. And then COVID happens, 2020, right? The world shuts down. And all of a sudden, I keep hearing this reoccurring thing. Hey, this is when the rich get rich and the poor get poor. And I'm saying to myself, I've lived a poor lifestyle. I've envisioned and dreamed of being rich one day, or making a lot of money and living a lifestyle of freedom. But yet it seems like when it's devastation, this is when the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. What are they doing? What do they know that I don't know that's keeping me in my position and keeping them growing and excelling and elevating? What I found at that time was a lot of wealthy people invest, right? Not only do they invest, but a lot of them find extra income through other means outside of their 9-to-5. And so I what was things that people were doing that were making money outside of a 9 to 5 job that you could do online or that you could do yourself and have autonomy and freedom. And what I found that interests me a lot was trading, because I have a highly analytical mind. And I'm saying to myself, this allows me to be able to have the freedom I want, the freedom of choice, the freedom to make as much money as I want, and not have to answer to anybody or be stuck in a cycle where my pay is dictated by somebody else. And no matter what I do or how hard I work, it's still going to be determined by somebody else granting me more income, right? More compensation for the job that I'm doing. So when it came to trading, I said, man, this is something that I see a lot of potential in. And it just so happened I had a few buddies and friends that I went to high school with that were already involved in it. I always was a person that felt like God was directing my path, and things would happen in my life to confirm that, hey, something is going on here. Somebody is orchestrating things, because when I look back on my life, I can see dots being connected to where I was at that time was a result of the dots that were connected when I reflected on things happening in the past. Me finding out that a few of my good friends that I played basketball with and went to high school with were already involved in the trading gave me an entry to say, hey man, bro, can you help me out? Can you send me some stuff? Can you allow me to lock in with y'all and learn this trading thing? Because I see the potential in it and I see y'all already doing it. And so what ended up happening, I learned more into trading. I got some courses, I got some information and education, went on YouTube, of course, did that whole thing as well. But by having some courses, I got a little bit of guidance that helped me to understand what path I needed to take at that time. And I started with options, right? And during that time, this is when the vaccine for the COVID virus was coming out. And I knew that at that time, I wasn't going to be willing to take that. But what that meant was that at that point, now you're going to have to risk losing your job, because working in a hospital is pretty much going to be mandated for you to take that vaccine. So since I didn't want to take that vaccine, I knew that I really had to lock in with trading, because if it came to a point where I lost my job, I needed something to rely on to make income that was outside of the corporate system, that was going to mandate for me to take a vaccine in order to work. I put in my religious exemption. I tried to go that route, which eventually it got granted. But during the time, there was no certainty that my religious exemption was going to be honored. So during that time, it was very stressful, because now I'm thinking, well, potentially I could lose my job and I still don't know enough with trading just yet, right? I'm still not making money. And so I tried options for a while. I made some money. I lost a lot of money. So I moved on from there to Forex, and I met some people who were doing Forex. So they introduced me to that and showed me the difference between trading Forex and options. I didn't want to stop trading because I knew the potential of it. And so I struggled even more with Forex, but I realized that there was a lot more efficiency to execution. I could get into trades a lot sooner and get out of trades a lot sooner. And that interests me, but I was still struggling. Until eventually I met a friend of mine during my time working a 9 to 5. Also the pandemic with the vaccine. Luckily I got my religious exemption granted, and by the grace of God, they made it to where it was no longer mandated for you to take the vaccine. But I'm still working in this 9 to 5, and I'm still seeing that during this time, how disposable I was, how close to losing my job due to something that had nothing to do with my ability or inability to do a job or fulfill the role. It made it to where at any point I could be put out on the street and be put in a position of survival. So that made it even more interesting and intriguing and more desirable for me to get this trading thing down, because if I didn't do it, at some point, if I lose my job, I have no way to make my own income unless I was given an opportunity from somebody else by way of a job. Right. So all of that being said, still having ups and downs until I find a friend that showed me futures trading, showed me the opportunity with trading futures and how I could leverage prop firms to be able to make more money and be able to kind of stretch the capital I had to educate myself longer while still learning in real market experience and time through trading with the futures market and using prop firm leverage. And so that is what I did. Now, it still was taking an emotional toll on me because I was working, but not seeing the results I wanted to see out of trading, although I still knew the potential was there, because like we all do, we see other people winning. We see other people making money and think if they can do it, then I can do it. And that can be discouraging to some people. And to some people, that could be a beacon of hope. And for me, that was a beacon of hope. So I kept going. I kept pressing. Although I took losses, there were plenty of times that I had to take breaks. I felt like that I wanted to quit. I felt like I couldn't ever overcome not only the skill of trading, but once I felt like I had a little bit of rhythm and understanding, I couldn't overcome myself. And so the things that I was doing in bad habits and undisciplined trading and over leveraging and over trading and trading at bad times and all of that, I just couldn't overcome that until I found a breakthrough for myself. I tried supply and demand. I tried the strat. I did the MACD crossover. I did pivot points. I had RSI. I had EMAs. Listen, I was doing it all to try to figure what was going to work for me and what made the most sense and gave me the deepest understanding of what and why I was doing what I needed to do in terms of trading and taking setups and entries and everything. I had a breakthrough once I understood that by being able to have a multi-time frame layer approach to viewing the market and understanding market structure, I started to see patterns and recognize trends that were happening when it came to trading and seeing things repeat themselves over and over. And from that, I said, okay, well, if this is truly happening, then I can find patterns that repeat themselves that I could use to gain a leverage and gain edge on the market as far as knowing when to trade and when not to trade. So that shift happened by me having a multi-time frame layered approach, which is what I teach inside my market structure mastery course and all the things that I teach. And it's because with every strategy, there is a context that's underlying all of those strategies. And that's having market structure involved in how you view the market. And that's having a multi-time frame layered approach, because one time frame doesn't give you all of the information that you need to take a strong and high confidence, highly convicted trade. Once I started using this approach, then I started to see real wins and real consistency. It went from just winning here and there to expecting wins, because I knew what I was looking for every time I came to the market and approached my screen or my desk or my phone, and I saw price action. I can start to mark out areas where I'm expecting price to come to for me to look and have a consistency in how I enter my trades, how I exit my trades, and if I even trade at all. So after that, then I started to see payouts coming, and this is while I was working my 9 to 5. I started to get payouts from Apex Trader Funding. I started to get payouts from Top Step, and that is what started to build and spiral into a positive snowball where I was able to put money aside and work and build a foundation for me to leave my 9 to 5 and eventually be able to trade and have that freedom of time and choice that I always wanted. After I stacked up enough cash and I had enough reserves for me to feel comfortable leaving my job, I went ahead and took that leap of faith, and that happened in March 2025. And so since then, I have been trading and teaching others how to trade and have that same sort of transformation for themselves so that they can transition from their 9 to 5 job to actually trading full time and having freedom of choice, freedom of time to be able to decide the path that you want for your life moving forward. When I reflect on it, man, I just thank God for allowing me to find trading, find people who I had trust in that were also trading and doing the same thing as well, that could help me along my path and kind of be my shoulder when it came to downtimes and be someone I could reach out to when it came to things that I didn't understand. When working a 9 to 5, I was just manifesting. I was at that time speaking things into existence because, like I said, I seen things happen in my life where I could see dots being connected, and it made me say, okay, if this is happening for me, something is pushing me somewhere. And as I'm learning these things and meeting new people and learning new ideas and understanding about this market, I start to find that it's pushing me towards success. I started to embody that. I started to believe that. And so with that belief, I started to speak that into existence. And so me leaving my 9 to 5 was a culmination and a manifestation of everything that I believe would happen because of what I knew to be true, which was that, hey, there was an opportunity for me, and all I needed was an opportunity for me to push myself into another stratosphere and do better for myself and for my family. And through all of that, what I realized is trading taught me a lot about myself. It taught me that, hey, I did have the will to win. Right. I am a resilient, persistent person. I persevere. I find ways to get things done. And so that is what I discovered with trading about myself, because there were tough times. There were dark nights. There were, tears on the pillows and sleepless nights and things like that. I mean, yes, work was put in, but also pain was put in as well, because there were times where I felt like it wasn't going to work for me. It was times that I felt like I just didn't have it in me. It was times that I felt like I just wasn't going to be able to get through because just this thing was breaking me. But eventually I realized that there was something that was on the other side of all of that. And so all of that was just preparing me to be able to speak to you in a way where I'm able to speak from experience, not just from theory. I've done it myself. I've worked a 9 to 5, but like I said, being in the medical industry, working in chemo rooms, making chemo for chemo patients for over 15 years, to having the thought and belief that there was more for me, that was better for me, and there was a better life for me. And eventually I'd get there. All I needed was an opportunity. And so when I found that opportunity in trading, I dove deep into that because I recognized that this could be my way out of my situation into a better life. And I believed that I was onto something. So if anything in this video resonates with you, if you saw yourself in any part of my story and you want help getting where I am now, the link is in the description. I work directly with traders one-on-one and in a group setting. Apply if you're ready. And if you're not ready yet, that's okay. Keep showing up, keep watching content, keep learning and educating yourself, and the shift will come. Either way, thanks for watching. Thanks for letting me share my story with you. I'll see you in the next one. All right. Deuces.